when Jane and I had first discussed my sermons and my coming down here as your intern, she said in so many words, "You've got lots on your plate. Just do a sermon you've done before. It'll be new to us." Sounded easy. And this one seemed like a surefire hit until I started reading it. To be honest, the only reason I'm still doing it is because, well, it's already in the newsletter. So too late to change. I wrote this sermon in the summer of 2015. That year had not been easy. You see, in my life, my focus, my purpose up until that point had been Dad. And with the graduation of my oldest from college and my youngest from high school in 2014, my days of football Fridays and band competitions were over. So the summer of 2015, when my sister asked me to join her and her family at a house on Smith Mountain Lake in Southwest Virginia, I thought, why not? It would allow me to get away and try to figure things out. I had been up to Smith Mountain Lake with my sister before, but that was with my kids. And so those trips were always planned to minimize the time on the road. So this time, while looking for an alternative, I discovered quite by accident that the normal interstate route crossed the Blue Ridge Parkway several times. And I thought to myself, what better way to spend some time and figure things out than do it on the Blue Ridge Parkway? After studying some more, I decided I would travel first to Asheville, North Carolina, and get on the Parkway there at the Visitor Center, and from there north to Roanoke, where I would leave the Parkway and head to the lake. The drive was about 300 miles or so, so I figured I would allow myself 2 days to make it, stopping in Blowing Rock, North Carolina as a habit. I would use this time to enjoy nature and try to rediscover Randy, who had long disappeared into the role of Connor and Patrick's dad. Like Steinbeck, I would travel alone. Though there would be no dog with me, I left him home with my youngest son. And instead of a specially made camper truck, I would be traveling in my 1985 faded yellow Mercedes diesel station wagon. Surely this journey would help me find my purpose and get me back in touch with what I had so carefully stowed away some 23 years ago with Connor's birth. After spending the weekend prior to my trek in Asheville, which may end up being a sermon in and of itself someday, I got up early on Sunday morning, arrived at the Blue Ridge Parkway Visitor Center in Asheville, and it was from there I was to begin my life-changing journey. I decided if I was to successfully get in touch with my purpose in life, there would have to be rules, and the rules were simple. First of all, there would be no radio. If I were to hear the voice of the divine speak to me, it would be not be via satellite radio. Secondly, no air conditioning. It was mid-June, but the majority of my trip would be in the mountains. So I decided it would be best for me and for my car to use no air conditioning. And lastly, and most importantly, I would stop at every scenic overlook and historical park along the way. After all, if I didn't, wouldn't that be the one where the mysteries of life would be revealed to me? For those not familiar, the Blue Ridge Parkway has extremely limited access. Unless you're willing to drive several miles off the road, you're limited in your choices of places to get food, water, fuel, and other facilities. So I also just figured that stopping everywhere I'd increase my options. I would take in all the sights, look at all the museums, of which there are a few along the way, and give myself permission to be still and listen to that small voice to reveal its truths. The speed limit on the Blue Ridge Parkway is 35 miles an hour, strictly enforced. And based on that and the number of miles to Blowing Rock, they figured it should take you about 3.5 hours to get there. I decided I'd do it in 8 to make sure I would be fully present for what was to be the great revelation, that full embrace and great understanding of all that was and is to come. I was ready to receive full and complete enlightenment. After leaving the great Asheville area, my first major stop along the way was Craggy Gardens Visitor Center. I walked in, bought a bottle of water, and decided to take a short stroll down the hiking trail. Shortly after entering the trail, there was a fork in the road. Straight ahead was a hike up to the picnic area, and to the right, a trail that led to Douglas Falls. Now, it should be said that I did not check my guidebook before setting off on this hike. But knowing there was no agenda and I was going on my gut feelings, I headed out. An hour or so later, I was halfway down the mountain, my knees and ankles screaming at me and my lungs searching for the air that had been conspicuously left off this hill. This couldn't be. I mean, wasn't this a spiritual journey? Being led by something greater than me? Why would I be led down this trail to pain? And then it got worse. The thunder started. As I turned back after never reaching the falls, I looked at my phone, which still had a pretty good charge, but had no signal. The thoughts that went through my head were not those of the ultimate meaning of my existence, but how, in fact, they would haul my body from the side of this mountain when and if they ever found it. I finally emerged back in the parking area, never having met up with the rain, limped back into the visitor center, bought another bottle of water, and got back in the car. Oh, by the way, I never found the phones. As I put the car in reverse and started back up the Parkway, I swore I heard a voice, and although I'm not quite sure, I believe what it said to me was moron. I continued up the road, knowing that for sure the next overlook would contain the answers to the meaning of life. I went to the top of Mount Mitchell, the highest point east of the Rockies, the Museum of North Carolina Minerals, Linville Falls. Yes, I actually did finally find waterfalls, several sets of them, and they're all beautiful, by the way. And I finally crossed over the famous Lynn Cove Viaduct and ended my 98-mile journey into Blowing Rock some 9.5 hours after I started. As I sat in my room at the Holiday Inn Express eating barbecue from the place next door, I pondered my trip and wondered, had I missed something? Had the answer been there and I missed it? I showered, crawled into bed, turned out the light, and was asleep before the room got dark. The next morning, sore from the previous day's trek, which included, according to my Fitbit, more than 27,000 steps and the equivalent of 101 flights of stairs. And for those of you who are curious, that's equal to walking up the Sears Tower. But I digress. I refueled myself and the car, bought myself a case of drinking water, and headed back for the next 100+ miles, knowing that this would be the day that all would be revealed to me. My journey on day 2 was not quite as eventful as the first day, but still enjoyable, as I again hit every overlook and exhibit, but found myself wondering if I would make it to the lake by dinner. And unfortunately, as on the first day, enlightenment eluded me. And as I exited the Blue Ridge Parkway at Roanoke to head to the lake, I turned on the air conditioning and the radio and went back to home. My return trip to Atlanta a week later was via the interstate, and upon getting back, I fell back into my usual routine. Work Monday through Friday, chores on Saturday, church on Sunday, same old same. It was on a Sunday at my home church, the light slowly began to be revealed. Out of the blue, several weeks after my return, one of our younger folks walked up to me as I wandered the church campus, her face lit up with a huge smile, and she said, "Mr. Randy, I want to be Mary in the Christmas pageant." I replied with enthusiasm. I thought that would be awesome, and carried on with a little more spring in my step. And oh, by the way, I had directed this Christmas pageant for 17 straight years of my life. Or as I like to say, there were 17 years I refused to say no to directing the Christmas pageant. I need to go back though and fill in another gap before my next step to full enlightenment is revealed. As a young man, to be honest, I believe it was freshman year in high school, I detested John Steinbeck. Now, I know it wasn't because I hated literature, because I don't. I actually love his writing, but it's because that while reading his book, The Red Pony, I cried in class. Now, my memory on the exact details is foggy. I don't remember if we were reading it aloud, if we were silently reading, but all of a sudden, during a particularly emotional part, and some of you who read the book probably can guess what part it might be, I felt myself starting to cry. Not one of those blubbering, stammering, unable to speak cries, but rather one of those tears flowing like a river down your cheeks before you're able to control it cries. And people noticed, including the teacher. While wiping the tears with my sleeve, she came over to me and asked me if I was okay. And I just said, this part is so sad. She acknowledged me and said that books made her cry too. But that wasn't what led to my decades of long hatred of Mr. Steinbeck. It was the months-long boo-hooing coming from my so-called friends in the hallways and locker room. And despite what you say or what Cosmo may tell you, high school girls are not drawn to a boy who was in touch with his feelings. The teasing was horrible. Now, how does that connect? Well, just a few weeks later, there was a guest speaker at my home church talking to us about our search beyond categorical thinking. And there was something in his sermon that Sunday that touched me. He was wonderfully personal and open, and at some point I found myself crying. I wasn't alone, and in fact, I no longer feel self-conscious about it, but nonetheless, I cried. But it wasn't the sermon where the next bit of light was given to me. Following the service, one of the members of the congregation came up to me, threw their arms around me, and gave me a hug and thanked me for being so vulnerable, saying, and I'm paraphrasing, that seeing me being vulnerable made them feel okay being vulnerable too. That made me cry too. But in that instant, the hurt that I felt from those many, oh Lord, I'm getting old, decades ago, when I was teased in the classroom, all that was erased. So just for the record, John Steinbeck, you are forgiven for making me cry. And that was my aha moment. When I realized I didn't need to go searching. I had found what I was looking for, and like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz, it was right here in my own backyard. I had some strong feelings while on my journey up the Parkway, and the sheer beauty was powerful. But it wasn't until I got back home I actually found what I was looking for. The place where I feel the spirit that surpasses all understanding, that true oneness with everyone and everything. It is where I experience that which is called by many names and feelings. And the wonderful thing is, we can call it by what it is to us. Nature, spirit, human connection, and for some, including me, in my own way, God. One of these days, I may travel the Parkway again. And maybe this time it'll be the whole length. And maybe this time I will stop at all the scenic overlooks and historical landmarks, or maybe I won't. Because this trip I won't be searching, because I know where to find what it is I'm searching. May it be so.